in a high growth startup, the legal teams tend to be relatively small. So you have your hands in a lot of different places.
Rachel Efrat, thank you for being on my show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good morning to you. Good night to me. You're calling from Ranana, right?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, Rachel, I know nothing about what we're going to talk about, which is most exciting for me because, you know, at this point, after about 100 and something episodes, it's really exciting when I get to talk to somebody and I have no idea what they're going to tell me. So, you know, a little spoiler, today you're a senior legal counsel at Lightricks, previously legal counsel at Get, but you've transitioned from actually, you know, traditional law and litigation into technology law. So Efrat, take me back, Rachel, sorry, take me back all the way, you know, back to when you're, you know, getting your law degree. Do you know you're going to be in tech?
No, I had no idea. I graduated law school and I immediately started clerking for a judge. I thought I was going to be a litigator. In my mind, I always had this dream of opening up like my own private practice, brick and mortar shop. So I clerked for a year and then I worked at a plaintiff's law firm representing people who had been wrongfully terminated from their jobs, involved in
not necessarily tech. Right?
Unrelated, completely unrelated.
Wow. So wait, Rachel, but you know, first of all, litigation. Paint me the picture. What does that entail when you say you were a litigator when you started out?
So litigators are lawyers who go to court and represent their clients in legal disputes that find their way to the courtroom. So as a clerk, you're kind of like the judge's right-hand man or woman. And you prepare all of the motions, do all of the legal research behind the scenes,
all of the objection,
so that the judge
right?
can make the proper decision.
All the times that they say objection, is that what it is?
Yes, I think you froze for a second. Sorry, can you just repeat the last?
No, I was joking to ask if you know, when you say to prepare all the motions, that's about, you know, saying the objection.
Sure.
Like in the movies. Okay, so you go from litigation, and then where does your career take you?
Sure. So what actually ended up happening, I was working at a plaintiff's firm, and then I ended up moving to Israel. I met my husband in New York, and his work brought him back to Israel. I came I thought it would be, you know, a 1-year stint. It's now been 5 years. And I quickly realized when I landed here that I wasn't going to do litigation in Israel. You know, the whole Hebrew, you know, I can get around, but litigation in Hebrew is a whole different ballgame.
Right.
So I started realizing, okay, what are my opportunities here? And a lot of the opportunities, and you kind of have to reinvent yourself, which is a challenge, like taking a step back to move forwards. Most of the opportunities for like English speaking American lawyers are in tech or in like the commercial space. So I got a job working at a boutique law firm, representing lots of startups. This was like my first entry into transactional work because before I had been, you know, working on like writing motions, going to court, depositions. There's a lot of different things you can do in the law. I've been fortunate to like enjoy everything that I've done. And I worked there for about 2 years. And then I wanted to move in-house. It was something I thought would be fun. You know, you get to actually, instead of representing lots of clients, you have one client. You get to know your client really well.
Right.
So I actually, my boss at Get, I emailed her. I saw that they were looking for a legal counsel, and I emailed her and I told her I would really love to work for you. And one thing led to another. Wow. I ended up getting hired there. I worked there for 3 years.
Rachel, what does that mean? What does that mean? The legal counsel within a company like Get, and whoever doesn't know, Get is already, I believe, a unicorn, right? An Israeli unicorn, where they provide ride-sharing services similar to Uber and Lyft across the world. Get is focused on different areas, particularly also Israel. But what does that mean to have a legal counsel within an organization like Get?
Sure. So basically what it means as a legal counsel, you are the in-house lawyer for the company. So the company is your client. In essence, like you have one client, and that's the company. In practice, you still have like hundreds of clients, because when you're in a high growth startup, the legal teams tend to be relatively small. So you have your hands in a lot of different places. It's not
but
like
when you say you have 100 clients, you mean 100 different, stakeholders within the company who need your assistance under the Get name, but you're considering them as 100 different clients because they have different needs.
Exactly. Okay. So you may find yourself working with, the product team on issues of like regulatory compliance, like in a ride-sharing company. There's tons of regulatory needs to make sure that your pricing is compliant. You may find yourselves working with like developers on the data team because GDPR, CCPA, all of a sudden you need to get all your data in place. Working with the finance team on intercompany agreements, investment rounds, like supporting due diligence, your bizdev team on partnership agreements. So every single stakeholder has totally different needs. Actually, this is like one of the things I love about it, because it really never gets boring. You have insights into so many different areas of the company, so many different people, and you get to see like everyone's different perspective. But your job as legal counsel is essentially to advise the company, to support them, and to manage their legal risk and exposure.
So are you the pessimist in the group, in the startup? No, because I'm serious, because, I'm thinking of a startup organization. Everybody's so excited. Everybody's like, yeah, move fast and break things. And all of a sudden, when I think of legal in this context of a startup, I think you're like the downer, the person who has to say no.
So I wouldn't call it the pessimist, but we're not always the most popular person in the room.
Right.
So there's a level of having to be comfortable being uncomfortable, especially when you work in Israel, where conflict is just part of the game, and people always just are so upfront. So yeah, you just have to be very clear, know your boundaries. I like to think that we're not the people who are saying no, that we're just coming from a different perspective. People we don't think the same way that we think. While we're also closing deals, a lot of the time we're also the same people who have to pick up the pieces when a deal goes sour, or when litigation ensues, or unfortunately, sometimes you go through like a bankruptcy event and your legal counsel will be involved in that. So we have a different perspective. But I like to think of it as problem solving, in that we look for creative solutions.
I love it. Okay, so I have so many questions already lined up in my head. But first one, at what point does a startup need a legal counsel in-house? Because most startups, when I incorporated my company in high school with my good friend Drew, we went into Cooley, and we they did pro bono. They incorporated for us. At what point do we say, okay, now we're big enough and we're ready to have somebody in-house to work full-time with us?
I think from what I've seen, generally, I don't know if that the CEO says, I want a lawyer in-house, but usually the board, requires it. As a company matures, after they've reached a certain level of investment, and things like compliance become more important. If you're starting to think down the road about an exit event, and you really need to have all your ducks in order, obviously you need a CFO, and the CFO kind of comes, I think, before the legal counsel, and that's when it starts to get more pressing.
Okay. No, that's fascinating. And then tell me a little bit about, the inside the organization. So you're sitting there, and a lot of the times you get to work with the different stakeholders in the organization, whether it's at Get or at Lightricks. I'm assuming that a lot of the times the rationale that you bring to the table and your decision making or your processes, they're not always understood by your colleagues, right? And you don't necessarily always have the time to go and explain why you need everything the way that you need it. Do you find that there's a lot of tension with that, or do people sort of give you the respect of, okay, you know what you're doing, we're going to trust you?
I think it's a work in progress. I don't think you can expect anyone to just listen to you because I said so. So like everyone who you're working with, it's a relationship. That's another thing I really like about the job. You have to be like a people person. So it's like relationships that you develop over time. You're working with a lot of different people, but you're working with the same people day in and day out. So like my approach, and I'm sure you can speak with different lawyers that have different approaches, is I try to explain to them like why I'm advising them in a certain way. Sometimes like they really don't care about the law. They just want like a yes or no answer. They're like, that's nice. Just tell me like if I can do it or not. But it's also so they can like understand the reasoning behind it. And it's not going to be the last question they have. So they can kind of get a sense of the direction of like what's okay, what's not. And it also helps them, be prepared for the next time. So they have it on their radar, and they can actually like reach out to me if they think something is not kosher. So I think educating your teams, training them, it's helpful for everyone. And in the end of the day, like, yes, I have an agenda as a legal counsel, but my agenda is really for the better of the company. I'm not just doing it because Rachel feels like it. So it's really educating the team so that they realize like this is important for Lightricks. This is important for the company, not just because my lawyer said so.
That makes perfect sense, and I think then you are part of the organization, you're a part of the culture, and they need to see you as such. It sounds to me that almost every aspect of the startup scene has changed dramatically over the past 10, 15 years. Whether it's things transitioning from top-down decisions to bottom-up decisions, responsibilities, different ways of going about getting a startup off the ground. Has the legal counsel arena within a startup changed at all over the past 10, 15 years, or is it the same sort of methodology, same types of people?
That I can't really say because I haven't been a legal counsel like in-house for 15 years.
From your experience, yeah.
I would imagine so, just because the industry has changed, like the technology has changed. So the way that things work now, things change so quickly because technology is changing so quickly. And because technology is changing so quickly, the regulations are also changing a bit more quickly than they used to as well. So the pace is just so fast, especially in a high-tech company. So I think probably the people who are, want to go in-house and be an in-house lawyer at a tech company, particularly, need to be ready to think quickly, have super strong intuition, because you will be hit with issues that you're not an expert in everything, but you have to know still how to react, and when you need to seek guidance from outside counsel who are experts.
No, 100%. I mean, one of the things that I was just thinking about in terms of the legal world is that companies have become so much more globalized over the past decade. I mean, if before you had a legal counsel that were experts in the jurisdiction, let's look at Get, for example, legal experts that are concentrated in Israel and transportation laws, for example, and all of a sudden you want to branch out because that's what every company is doing today. And all of a sudden you need to have expertise in those different countries. It's no longer the same expertise. You need to expand your knowledge, right? And not just within Get, but every company that is selling globally, and today almost every single company is selling globally.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge because everyone wants to be global. That's how you make money, right? You don't make money by staying in Israel. So it's a challenge because you find yourself in a situation, and every industry is different. Like ride sharing, for example, you might have different, taxi laws in New York City compared to upstate New York, and like you're operating in the same state, yet the taxi rules are different, and the pricing is different, and all of these laws have to be reflected in your product and how the price like appears to the end user. And then even negotiating that across different countries and different languages, different tax laws. It's a lot of work because you're actually like seeking guidance from experts all over the world in all these different jurisdictions, and you have to decide, okay, are we going to have what like bespoke product for every single jurisdiction, or do we make a global solution that will work for every single jurisdiction? It's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, but it's exciting, and it gives you the opportunity to work with people all over the world who are experts in their field, which is amazing.
I'm very curious, how long of an onboarding process is it for a legal counsel traditionally when you enter a tech company? And I'm making a comparison, as an engineer, having just, for example, onboarded into Hippo Insurance, basically within 1 or 2 days, they expect you to already be pushing code to production. I imagine it would be a little bit longer for a legal counsel that has to really get acquainted with the company policies and legal, right?
It should, but you still hit the ground running because usually by the time you arrive, they really need you. Yes, you do take some time to like read, your terms and conditions, your privacy policy, meet with, all the relevant stakeholders to understand the different products and roadmap. But people are always pulling you from the side saying like, hey, can you review this? Hey, I have a question on this. And you quickly understand, okay, like these are going to be the main like issues of law that I'm going to have to become an expert in, because every industry is very different.
Right. And before I asked about, whether your colleagues and other employees in the organization understand your decision-making processes, and now I'm shifting the question more towards the leadership. Does the leadership necessarily understand all the legal intricacies behind the decision-making? I'm thinking about the CEO, senior vice president positions. These are people that, are making like critical decisions day in and day out. And I imagine that they're also the ones who are having the most interaction with the legal counsel as they are considering their options. How much do they generally understand the legal scene behind these different decisions?
I think they need to understand it, because ultimately these are also the people who are responsible for the company. They're directors and officers. So even more so, it's important for them to understand, because if they accept risk, they're the only ones in the company who actually have authority to accept risk. So it's your job to explain the risk.
100%. The dissonance in my mind is that at the end, you think of a startup and a fast-growing company. You think, okay, you want to move quickly, you want to make decisions quickly, and you also delegate a lot of tasks to other decision-making authorities, and you trust them. And one of these key figures, I'm guessing, is the legal counsel. But at the end, this is one area in which it's imperative that the decision makers don't just rely on your statements, but they have to be able to defend them later on. Especially since we're talking about legal things here. Rachel, This has been so great. I have 2 more questions, but first, before we end, I want to ask you for 3 words that you would best use to describe yourself.
Okay, so I guess I'll choose like words that are like apply both like personally and professionally.
Yes.
So reliable, hardworking, and up for a challenge.
Reliable, hardworking, and up for a challenge. I love it. And right before we leave, Rachel, talk to me a little bit about why you're so passionate about what you're doing. Coming in very fresh into this world of legal counsel, why now? Why in tech? You could have continued doing what you were doing before. What excites you about the work that you're doing today?
I think it's a combination of three facets. I like working with people. I like problem solving, and especially in tech, it's never boring. You get exposure to the most interesting topics, whether it's like machine learning, privacy issues. There's a cerebral part to it as well.
I love it. Rachel, thank you very, very much. Toda rabba. Have a fantastic day and stay safe and stay healthy. This is great.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care.
Take care.